Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft news. It's been a week. The World First has kicked off, 8.3 is still developing, and Warcraft 3 Reforged has got a bit of a situation. And yes, I do say situation because between the EULA changes that kill a whole bunch of the really classic custom maps and quite a massive post-trailer downgrade of the 4 hours of Reforged cutscenes, yeah, I mean, the bean counters above Blizz sure have made life hard for the devs. First though, we've got a new month in review segment later on in this video. That's going to explain why we'll be heading off to record with a church organ next week, so that's kind of cool. And also, it's a new month, and that means a new fantasy class and race theme on Patreon. This time, it is orcs and shamans. You will get this gorgeous art plus the shaman pin, the second in this year's class pin collection. We're going to get the pins later on in this month. Turned out Chinese New Year and perhaps the coronavirus ended up delaying things a little bit there. But yeah, our patrons are the core of what we do, and they allow us to do things like the complete history of World of Warcraft series, and that's the kind of content that, I mean, often it's break even or loss from just the YouTube ads, but, you know, it's the type of stuff we really love doing, and they allow us to do that, and the next episode is up there on Patreon right now. So, a big thank you to them, and let's get into the news. Warcraft 3 is an absolutely legendary game. I mean, that and Age of Empires, they were much of my childhood. I'm pretty sure both those series were pretty important for you as well. And I was really thrilled with Reforged's announcement in 2018. I mean, I just thought, like, wow, upgraded cinematics, new cutscenes, cutscenes that are shot cinematically, maybe even a higher unit select cap. Suffice to say, those hopes have been dashed by the release of War3 Reforged, and while the core Warcraft 3 campaign is still there, and is still a great campaign, same for Frozen Throne, well, it's being coined Warcraft 3 Refunded, Warcraft 3 Deforged. Now, we fully cover this story on our industry news channel. If you don't know about the channel, we do post 6 industry news and analysis videos per week there, and there's a deep dive into the Warcraft 3 stuff that you'll probably find interesting, and some heartening news, actually, from much of the old Blizzard North team in another video. So, with this story, for some context, right, the Blizzard Classic Games team worked with a Malaysian studio called Lemon Sky. Now, Lemon Sky did the assets for StarCraft Remastered, and if you look at StarCraft Remastered, I mean, they did an excellent job. It's pretty much perfect. And we're going to loop back to this sort of inter-studio interaction a little bit later on in this segment. Okay, so Reforged was announced to come along with a revamp of the story and 4 hours of Reforged cutscenes. Story first, right? Those story updates, which were to bring it in line with Chronicle and to shine a little bit more light on characters like Jaina and Sylvanas, well, they were cut. Now, Blizzard have been open about this, but it was a massive change to the scope of the game from what was first announced, and very much something that Blizzard didn't really go out of their way to inform people about. Like, they didn't email people who had pre-ordered to update them in this change in the game's direction. So, with that gone, it was just supposed to be the game we knew with some new models, you know, some new features, Reforged cutscenes, things like that. Now, BlizzCon 2018 had this trailer. It's a reshot Stratholme cutscene, and look at it, like the camera is far more dynamic. The production values clearly are greatly increased. Now, this trailer is still on their website. It's still marketing the game to this day, and this scene is in the trailer, but it's not in Reforged. Reforged cutscene, its cutscene is the same as the original, right? Just a static RTS camera and then talking head frames down below. Now look, people rightly assumed that 4 hours of Reforged cutscenes meant that the cutscenes would look like what was in the trailer, the more cinematic feeling ones. But that isn't the case. I mean, why? Well, I mean, seemingly budget, but honestly, I'm amazed because, like, I've typically worked in the Unity game engine, and when doing camera work there, I've been using the Cine Machine plugin, and doing scenes like that is extremely easy, but seemingly not for the Reforged team, and not for the tech that Reforged was built upon. So, unfortunately, I think this is tantamount to false advertising, and therefore I do think it is rather immoral, and it is something that we should actually call out. And yes, there are explanations as to why, and no, I don't really blame the Classic Games team themselves, but at the end of the day, customers pre-ordered something based on these 4 hours of Reforged cutscenes with the trailer that showed those cutscenes, and that's not what they got, and I don't think that's okay. Now, sadly, that's not all. We've got the Arthas Illidan cinematic that is, I mean, I'd actually say rather embarrassing. So usually, right, with things like, say, this fantastic WoW cutscene with Varian, what happens is they make custom rigs and models, and this allows for just a higher detail, more expressive range of, animations that are really needed for a dramatic scene. And when you look at the Reforged cinematic, it's pretty clear that those are just the in-game models. I mean, the animation is really stiff. The faces are uncanny. The rigs are just not up to the job. And again, it's probably down to time and budget. Now, as for the rest of the cinematics, they are 1080p renders of the originals. They are not redos, but I don't believe that Blizzard ever claimed that they would be redos, and I think that's fair enough. I think those originals still hold up to this day, and I mean, it's continually impressive just how strong the Blizzard cinematics team are, even back then. I mean, for the year that stuff was made, it is incredible work. So okay, there's basically no new content, and the content that is there doesn't really live up to what was promised from their marketing materials, but it actually does get worse. Multiplayer and custom maps were the lifeblood of War 3, and the move over to the new Battle.net, it has brought some features, but it's also lost in-game profiles, clans, and a bunch of other features. But what's even worse here is that they've also actually disabled old Battle.net, and that means that any original copies from the discs, of Warcraft 3, they will no longer work outside of single player and LAN. But it even gets worse than that, because they've tried to scrub that version of the game from existence by stealth changing everyone's classic War 3 install to War 3 Reforged. I mean, yeah, if you didn't buy Reforged, but you open Battle.net, your Warcraft 3 will have downloaded 30 gigs of useless assets, it will have updated to Reforged, but without the HD stuff, and your original War 3 copy won't be the same anymore. And the problem is that Reforged is worse than War 3, right? It's got less features, and it's got a lot of performance problems. And then it's not even like if you had the discs, you could play multiplayer on the old BNet, because the old BNet is dead. And this is bad for custom games, because many custom games are not going to make the transition. Blizzard's new EULA means that they fully own the IP for every custom map, so that'll kill a lot of creativity. And, well, custom maps that use other IP as their theme will be banned, so no themed custom maps. And if you want to play those classic maps in War 3, you can't, because A, they replaced your old BNet install of it, and B, they disabled original Battle.net. So your classic version via new BNet is gone, and old BNet itself is also gone, so your disc version can't play those custom games. So as you can imagine, there's been a lot of customer dissatisfaction in this, and people have reported issues getting refunds as well. And there's also reports of Blizzard banning forum posters who are recommending refunds, or who are actually providing people for instructions on how to request a refund. Because unlike, say, Steam's refund system, with Blizzard, it's a bit more arduous, and it's manually through CS. Now, for our experience, I mean, the game ran terribly at 5K, terribly at 1080p, but flawless at 1440p, so that's a bit odd. We've had missions fail to load, the menus felt far worse to navigate than Warcraft 3, and overall, it's just a really bad situation, and I think it's got a pretty clear thing to blame. The bean counters, right? It seems like the classic games team were just given a project of greater scope that they could actually handle. I mean, this was supposed to be summer 2019. It's now January. The end of January is when it came out. Coordination with Lemon Sky, that must not have worked out that well. I mean, if you look at the art assets made, it's a different art direction than classic Blizz. I mean, compare those assets to those from Heroes of the Storm, where the Blizzard style is very intact. I mean, yeah, some of Reforged looks great, but some of it kind of looks like Raid Shadowlands, or Shadow Legends, even in terms of being a bit generic, and that's really sad to see. And personally, I think it's down to timelines, I think it's down to coordination problems between Blizz and Lemon Sky. I personally suspect that this is a project that was going to be massively behind schedule and over budget if it had its original vision, so with RTS not being a massive genre, the higher-ups probably just decided to cut scope and ship it. I'm pretty sure that's what happened here. I very much doubt the classic games team are happy with this. I can't imagine the Blizzard themselves are particularly happy with this, yet as we've seen with quite a lot of recent content, timelines and budgets are hard at Blizzard. We've seen the reports from Jason Schreier, cutting costs, pushing out more games. That's the directive from up top, and I think the impact of that is becoming rather clear. This is not a game that lives up to Blizzard's legacy, and the end product does not reflect the old ways. Blizzard used to mean total polish, it used to mean players first. I think Warcraft 3 Reforged goes against both those things. It's sad, it probably won't sell that well, it probably will be refunded a lot, and I think the best that we can do is hope that this stings them enough financially that they actually are forced to learn. Okay, with that covered, back to World of Warcraft. So, Blizzard have reverted their PTR change to time walking that saw the weekly quest drop for 60 bits of, well, heroic gear. Now, I actually think reverting this is probably the right move for game balance, though I totally understand why a lot of people are disappointed about it. Ultimately, my experience here is if I think about, say, normal raiding, the sea of 445s that I've got from other sources means that most of the normal bosses aren't relevant to me, and it's only week 2 of raiding. If that was to happen for heroic mode, then that would kind of undercut the core of progression. Now, that said, this was in the PTR. They didn't explain themselves. They then removed it in live, and they still didn't explain themselves. I think communication has to be better here, and I think the better the communication is, the less that flip-flops and decisions sort of changes like this, the less that will hurt their image. So overall, communication is key. Next up though, some good news. There's a bunch of new hunter tames, and the full info is on screen, but dread ravens, sea serpents, rocks, Amani bears, Akir bugs, and even more. It's not a massive change to the game, but it's nice to see those things be added in the hotfixes. And I think little things like that just add so much flavor to the RPG experience for many people, and I think the strengths of those are something Blizzard should really double down on. Next, a new Tyrande cutscene. Now, this plays right after the Darkshore Warfront. If you've done that, you can go and you can do a quest which triggers it. And basically, Chandris acknowledges her differences in style with Tyrande, but says that Tyrande is their leader and is an incarnation of the Night Warrior. Now, Tyrande then goes on to deliver a short speech about the power of hope. And you know what? This is not massive or earth-shattering, but it's nice to see the outcome of Darkshore actually be in-game. And it's more Tyrande content. And we do know that Tyrande is going to be a major character in Ardenweald in Shadowlands. Now, Ardenweald, that is the death version of the Emerald Dream, pretty much. And there's loads of hints about Elune and the Dream, and, you know, now we're going to the dark version of the Dream for death, and Tyrande is the dark avatar of Elune. So, suffice to say, with that character, I think we are in for some really serious business. Then next up, a super quick note on Vision. So, first of all, you've got to do the Lost Areas and open the chest. You get so many more mementos from them, and just wanted to, point out to you, I've been doing them in single player. I kind of wish I went more for the single player actual, tree there. I've just really enjoyed the responsibility and the challenge of knowing that if I die, there's no revive, that's it, gone. Yeah, I don't have the free res yet, but yeah, you want to get that free res that brings you to 500 sanity, and then you also want to get the one where killing an elite or a rare will give you 200 corrupt or 200 sanity back. If you get those, you can get really far, and I just wanted to say, I'm still having so much fun in Visions. I think they are an absolutely excellent piece of content, and I know that this patch has its problems, but I just continually want to say to Blizzard, Visions are great. Please let us do more Visions somehow. Anyway, they're great. Let's move on. Corrupted gear. It's been a few weeks now, and I think we've all got a lot more corrupted gear for our characters, and it's an interesting situation. Blizzard have done a whole bunch of balance passes. Balance is still completely out of whack, but it's a bit less completely out of whack, so that's a good thing. As always, Blood Mallets. Blood Mallet has been updated. Blood Mallet is the MVP for doing a lot of the simming for us. That said, I've got to admit, yeah, my Raid Bot subscriptions have been getting a lot of use. Raid Bots pretty much is the MVP of this patch, and certainly I think that the balancing of your corruption values and actually knowing, is an effect good or not? Is it worth its amount of corruption? Yeah, it's not something that you can intuit yourself because just of the balancing of the numbers, and you pretty much do need raid bots to be able to make a good decision there. That's certainly an interesting situation. I think there's parts of it that are really fun, but I broadly suspect it's not really fulfilling Blizzard's goals there. I mean, if you just look at the Ian Hazzikostas quote about the player agency and all of that, I'm not really sure if it actually lines up that well in reality. I would definitely say maybe this is something to drop for Shadowlands, and maybe don't use it as a template for Shadowlands. I think more simple gear, but things like tier sets and, like two-piece, ring sets and things like that, I think they are the route forward for making more interesting gear in the game, and maybe not just these overarching systems that really just take control of all gear. And that said, I mean, I've got Gushing Wounds, I've got two Void Ritual, the Void Explosion one, that's really good. Got two of those. I haven't got Infinite Stars, but certainly I've got lucky, and if I max my character out, I think I've got 163 net corruption. So the corruption balance is certainly something that I've had to deal with a little bit more than other people who have not been so lucky with corruption gear. But that said, I mean, man, that corruption gear lock, that has got such an impact on how much damage your character ends up doing, at least for a DPS player. Certainly it feels like corrupted gear is far more dominant than Titan Forging ever was, especially because, sockets and stuff are still a thing. So let me know what you think about that. I suspect the WoW devs are also pretty darn curious as well. And then to round us off, the month in review. This is a new segment that I want to do sort of at the start of a new month, to look back in the previous month and just give you updates about what's going on with us. So over on our news channel, we reformatted how we do things behind the scenes, and we've pretty much got consistent 6 videos per week across, our reports, our roundups, and our deep dives. So that's been paying off really well. We kind of had struggled to maintain the schedule on that channel, but yeah, now it's a lot more solid, and certainly it seems like we're getting, the views are up, the subscribers are up, people seem to enjoy the videos more, so I'm really happy with how that's done. Now, as for Warcraft, I mean, obviously the Warcraft channel's done incredibly well, and a lot of that was driven off some fairly dramatic events that went on. It was certainly, from my perspective, sad to have seen the videos that I put the most effort into getting the least views, you know, like the guides for this patch. There's a soloing video coming up that I've had a lot of fun making, but, you know, I know it's coming up, and I know it's probably going to really struggle in views. I mean, if you want the more gameplay-focused content, please go to the channel next Tuesday and watch that video. It's about soloing Legion. I think it's going to be really fun. So that's kind of what's up there. I think we might be in for a little bit of a quiet period over the next 2 months until the Shadowlands Alpha actually comes out. Personally, I've got no idea when that's going to be. I've not heard anything from anyone. All I know, sort of, is they're a little bit, you know, the schedule's tight, let's just say, but I don't know how it's going to impact Alpha or Beta. But certainly it seems like we're in for a little bit of a quiet period till that kicks off, and then once that kicks off, I mean, it'll be full bore. We are going to be going harder on this Alpha and Beta than we ever have, and we're working on our plan. We can't really announce it yet, but we want to start sort of like a feedback program to help Blizzard know what you think. And yeah, I'm going to try to reach out to some of the people I know at Blizzard to coordinate on, you know, what sort of format would they like your data to be in, how would they like those things, because I really want to go hard in this Alpha. I really want to be, you know, fair and critical, but I also want to be helping them out by actually making, you know, actionable reports for them as much as I can. So yeah, that's what's going on there. That's the WoW plan. Now, the other thing is game development. So the first draft of the script pretty much is done. We're sort of over 130,000 words now. That's really exciting. We have had 43 minutes of the original score be delivered. There's actually more on the way. And next week, we're going to a church because, well, we've got a church organ. Yeah, we're doing a whole bunch of original music, just going to a church, making our own music on an organ. That's cool. I cannot wait for that stuff to go on. And yeah, game dev stuff's going absolutely fantastically. Yeah, we should have some exciting announcements on the way. But I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big team now. You know, we've got 7? Is it 7 overall? I'm trying to think. It's sort of hard, you know, is it including me and Thomas, my sort of co-lead in that? But yeah, it's going really well. We'll have more to talk about. And certainly if you want a little bit more detail on that, right now it's on the Discord. But whenever things properly kick off, there'll be a lot of game dev related content. And don't worry, it will not be in a way where it is spamming your sub feed if it's something that you're not interested in watching. So anyway, that is our month in review. That's our update. Thank you very much for all your support this month. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of lore, a lot of the historical content, some gameplay content coming up. So stay tuned for that, because there actually is good stuff in the realm of non-dramatic things coming up. Thank you very much. I will see you next time.